As we continue in the Halachot of Shabbat, we were discussing foods that are edible for animals versus foods that are not edible for animals. What's an example of foods that are edible for animals but not edible for human beings? So we said, for at least Am Yisrael, things that are nevirot terefot, things that are not kasher, are not edible for Bnei Yisrael, for us, but it is edible for our animals, for animals that we own. We could give food that is not kasher to an animal. It's not asur, as the Torah says, that kelev tashlichun oto, neverot utrefot are permitted to give to the animals. And we said, therefore, anything that is designated to be given to an animal, let's say meat that is raw, that is spoiled, where you would give it to an animal, is in fact not muktze. However, there are some types of foods that aren't considered edible to animals because of the halacha. What are examples? Let's say food, like fruits, that grew on a tree, and it was attached to the tree before Shabbat, right in the beginning of the Shabbat. And then, halfway through the Shabbat, it fell off the tree. Maybe there was a strong wind, it fell off the tree. Fruits that fall off of the tree on Shabbat are muktze. Why? Because it is not permitted, not for a person to eat it, and not for a person's animal to eat it. And since that's the case, it has at least until Motzei Shabbat no usability on Shabbat. It cannot be given to a person, can't be given to an animal, and therefore has the status of muktze. Notice it has nothing to do with a violation. There was no violation that happened per se. The fruit fell from the tree, so there was nothing violated. But nevertheless, the Chachamim were concerned if a person comes to eat it, he might come to the next time around pick it as well. And that would clearly be a violation. So therefore they prohibited the eating of it or the benefiting of it on Shabbat until Motzei Shabbat. So therefore, even if a goy were to pick fruits from a tree for himself on Shabbat, it would still be asur for the Jew to eat it or even handle it. Another example is not fruits from a tree, but let's say a goy catches fish on Shabbat. For himself, not for a Jew. He catches fish for himself on Shabbat. That is muktze the entire Shabbat until Motzei Shabbat. Again, because in the onset of Shabbat, this was not considered something that was within feasibility and usability of a Jew, and therefore, once it's established as muktze in the beginning of Shabbat, it retains that status of muktze, and therefore a goy who catches something on Shabbat that was not accessible without it being caught, a Jew is not allowed to have it on Shabbat. If you're not allowed to have it, it has the status of muktze because even the animals aren't allowed to benefit from it on Shabbat. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.